This is the fourth out of 9 builds that I'm putting together in relation to the launch of the Secret Energy Foundation, also Creator DAO, and the Warriors of Love NFT. And in these builds, it's more of a multidisciplinary. I'm actually discussing everything that pertains to these topics. And as of recently, we've now started digging into sovereignty. We've started digging into the legal structure. We've even connected that in with NFTs. Hopefully today, everyone understands a little bit more about why the blockchain offers some solutions, but also in itself is somewhat of an initiation of a much more larger problem for the populace if they don't realize what's going on and empower themselves with these tools and instruments rather than allow them to be used against them. Again, there was a poll that was run, and that poll was asking how many had an opportunity to participate in watching any of the Cosmic Law videos, in this case specifically Lex Mercatoria, which is basically the laws of commerce, and more importantly, the laws of, wow, I guess you would say the undead. When you start really looking at these legal frameworks, you can actually see why it would be called Black's Law Dictionary. So the first thing I'm going to point out here is that there's about 62 or 63% of those who are on the line today that have actually seen or heard anything about these videos specifically. So we can say that it's going to be somewhat of a 50-50 crowd today. So what I'm going to do is, instead of speaking as if there's a larger percentage that actually has went through these already, I'm just going to only highlight some of the things that actually pertain to what we want to discuss today, which is the circular economies, and I want to call that actually in this case a toroidal economy. I'm giving it a bit of a name change just because I always feel like that we're spinning up rather than going in circles. So circular economy is, of course, great if you can implement one. But what I'm seeing now is the need to implement something that not only is circular, but also is boosting those that are involved in it. Hence the other part of the title, networks or social media networks should pay you. And the reason is, just as blunt as it can get, is that it's time. And in the event that someone is investing time and somehow that time is being monetized on, then there should come into question really the agreement between you and that specific service. And in this case, if we can imagine, if Facebook doesn't pay anyone, Instagram does not pay anyone directly, YouTube pays 0.005%. Almost very minuscule because it's designed around those big mega channels that get millions of views in hours. So in that rate, trying to get rich on YouTube, good luck. In fact, if you've noticed, our YouTube channel has been alive for, I believe we're on 12 years with YouTube, and there has never been monetization turned on except for one time for about 3 days when we were trying to explore this super chat feature, which was a disaster, and it turned off again. So there is no monetization that actually happens on YouTube. And that is, of course, for a reason. It's on purpose. We kind of loathe when our videos are interrupted by something that also does not represent our cause. And really the whole energy around everything right now in the future, as you're going to see, is that it's really about your allegiances. It's about your alignments. It's about your affiliations. And, how you choose to affiliate is going to really determine what kind of energy you're dealing with, the success, the failures, and then overall some of the decisions that you will have to make when the line is being drawn in the sand. And of course, it's very unfortunate for a world that is so abundant to continue to get to these points where there's yet more division. However, you can see the entire inception of the world itself is built on division, where a soul is actually split and then bought into a physical reality. So your soul is kind of tethered to you, but in most cases, many people are somewhat split from their soul, and that is symbolic to the cutting of the umbilical cord. So make no mistake, today is not going to be a super esoteric conversation. I don't know, it just happens sometimes, but it is going to be more centered around the economy and exactly what we've created as the seeds and the foreground to begin to allow us to actually begin to practice higher and a greater level of reverence for each other and how we're transferring our energy. Now, I will first say that, because you can sometimes throw the baby out with the bathwater. And what that means is obviously some folks would just want to go and throw their passports away, want to go throw their credit cards away, want to go throw their driver's license away and just go somewhere and, do what? I'm not sure, but it could be one of those things where you just feel like you want to get out of it, but you don't necessarily know where you're going or how to get out of it. And the reason why I like these builds is because, as I say, fools rush in. If you look through the information that is being provided, you first of all get educated so you're not running out there on a frenzy. Also, you're not getting fleeced by people who say that they can do certain things for you in that legal space and really have no power or jurisdiction to. And then more importantly, you can begin to dial this in spiritually. And I can tell you for sure, just from my run of the galaxy multiple times, that until one really understands this particular part of how they got here and why they're here and the condition that they're in, I'm sure that at best this will repeat. At worst, there may be another realm that all of this stuff plays out on after you make too many mistakes. So I would say be very astute at what exactly is being presented, because how you carry yourself in life will determine, again, what's going to happen to you in infinity, because there is no end. Also, I will mention that there is a huge difference between a symbiotic relationship versus a predatory relationship. And at the most core fundamentals to what we're even discussing and even talking about and even building is, how are we ensuring we become more symbiotic and maintain symbiotic? And also, even for just as a faction, if someone is using our tools, we don't want to attract predators either. So it's a two-way street here. It's not just, somebody over here trying to talk about some knowledge to get more viewers. It's actually about creating something that is harmonic and actually balanced. And then obviously there's many predatory relationships that take place in the reality every single day, especially in relation to commerce. It could be as simple as the Nike shoe store. You buy a pair of shoes. Nike has nothing for you. Nike has nothing for the people that work for Nike. And Nike has anything for their shareholders at this stage, because the entire relationship is vampiric and predatory. So when we can see maybe someone made some homemade shoes or gym shoes on Etsy, you could imagine that still those gym shoes will have a lot more ethics inside of them and a lot more symbiotics inside of them than something from one of these major, large, dead corporations, so dead corpses. It's very important to see that the reason why the whole mythos of horror exists is actually to hide people away from the law and hide people away from the truth, because some of the things that are, or a lot of the things that are actually discussed within finances have to do with dead people. It seems to be a very weird phenomenon, but it is very real. And I think that's because many of the founding fathers actually practice more of a darker form of magic called necromancy, hence the term dead presidents, where the whole goal is to tax people beyond death. And actually to create false realms where a person would operate even as a dead person before they died. And so this is quite riveting stuff. It is absolutely true. What makes it true is that it is the foundation of the legal system that we stand on. It is the foundation of the monetary system, of the money that we use. And because all of these are negotiable instruments, meaning even medical bills, etc., are like money in themselves as far as the piece of paperwork. And if it has the right numbers on it and it's authorized, then this has everything to do with how we live life, how our family lives life, and how our children will live life. And so that means knowing about this does take you outside of the matrix. For real. There's many people who always talk about getting out of the matrix, and for sure you can go on some very spiritual journeys and fly up out of your third eye, but you always seem to return back to the matrix. And maybe that's because the matrix itself hasn't been completely defined in what it is. But this matrix that we're going to be talking about today is probably the most solid one, because it actually affects how we even move around on this specific plane. So what we're talking about today is we're talking about getting out of bondage. And we talked about how stocks and bonds are paired together in the respective markets, just to show that there is something called a bond. And when we look at that through etymology, we find that it means that something is being chained to something, preferably something of value in this system or perceived value. So bonding is a part of bondage. And we already talked about our last build, how that bondage is pretty much the reason why most people can't make good financial decisions. It seems to be the monkey's paw of the entire thing. You can set up a lot of stuff, get the right partners, the people, the investment, and still not face success. You can have a really good idea, find investors, and then get going on the project, and then still not see success, and then just begin to wonder, hey, is it me? And we already cracked that. We energetically have something that really determines how much money we can really hold. And the term is bank, as in the ocean has a bank. And as you know, that generally the water does not overflow the bank. And the reason for that is that there is a system of governance that says, hey, once you reach your cutoff point, then you can't have any more. Or if you do, then you will be going into debt, or it will be wasted. So many have received large amounts of capital even, and then found themselves months later, maybe even years later, sometimes days later, completely indigent again, and just kind of wondering how they went through that money so fast. So money is a very mystical thing. And that's why I said it's great to be a multidisciplinary, because when we start talking about even coins and cryptocurrency and blockchain and all this kind of stuff, to really omit the spiritual conversation almost doesn't even let a person into what we're talking about. And maybe that is also why it's so confusing, because people have a tendency not to know what is the real purpose of blockchain and why has it been thrown as a life raft into this situation that we're dealing with. And those who choose to grab it may find themselves in another vista, basically given the ability to now become sovereign and to begin to transact privately. And that's, of course, what a DAO is also about, is it allows you to form a club where everyone believes in the same ideals. It's actually some of the core principles to how many of these so-called secret societies are formed. But what it really is allowing there to be a privacy, because the word secret and privacy do really go together. So if we called them privacy societies, maybe sometimes they wouldn't sound the same to some who are using those terms. So privacy is a big thing. It is definitely not, word this properly, it is not a right, okay? It's not a right. It's not something that falls into any system in itself, the word that we know as privacy. It is who we are. So we have the ability, because see what this connects into is this connects into why you're able to have your dream. Okay, so every night you can dream, and you could dream up a bunch of people, you could dream up a bunch of places, you could dream up a bunch of things. And all those things, while they may be a replica of the real versions or what you think is the real versions, they're actually exclusively put together by you in that specific dream. So that's your privacy. And if you choose to actually disclose what goes on in your dream with others, then that's up to you. But that is something that you have and something that belongs to you. And so I just wanted to make it very clear is that even though we have to in many ways restore ourselves to this term called privacy, we should understand that it is at minimum a right then. It is at minimum something that everyone should have, and not something that people should have to fight for or try to claw back. So the next thing is that I want you to just see a little bit more about etymology, because sometimes we look at these words and we've been blowing over them for years. And when we bring it back into a really sound perspective of linguistics, we kind of get what's going on anyway from the words. So that means that you don't actually have to really believe in what I'm saying. There's terms like sold that sound like soul for a reason. When they even call it the states, like if you notice that it's the United States and Washington is a state, this actually really refers to more of a state of consciousness. As you've seen, like there's a state of consciousness. So what state of consciousness are you in? Are you in the Washington state? Are you in the Nevada state? So that also kind of empowers even the words that come before. In most cases, let's say if a state is named a certain name, it highly means in this particular system that we're dealing with that is actually a name of a specific entity. And that entity causes a specific state of consciousness. Now, also, when you go and file for a business, it is called filing for an entity. So once again, it seems that the spiritual terms and the legal terms have been melded together, but we're kind of sold that there's a separation between church or spirituality and state, or the government. And that is absolutely not true. It is another one of the techniques to cause a great deal of confusion. And if you don't really see what's going on both sides, if you may, a lot of people have a tendency to jump out of the frying pan and into the fire, meaning they actually leave a certain state or a belief, and then they go into one that could potentially be even worse for them because they don't even recognize it as actually being the issue in the first place. And many of the religions are like that. Some have kind of jumped from one religion to another to still find themselves actually worshiping something beside themselves. Also, I will highlight this word war is consistently used all the time in many of the things that we're doing, except it's spelled W-O-R. And those who are proficient enough in Hebrew and in Arabic know that there are no vowel points. So WR just in itself, or war, is also at the front of worship. And it is because for sure the gods are leading, or generals on the battlefield, leading everyone into the next level of conflict. And then also work every day is war, because indeed these businesses, they fight against each other on the realm of commerce. And on this realm of commerce, most people using the all caps name have been classified as somewhere in the realm of a dead wraith. Specifically, still living as an undead, still able to eat and drink on this battlefield, but being heavily taxed for all of the things that are their expenses while they are operating in this dead franchise. Just to, again, make it very simple, the name has been franchised. This means your name, when placed in all capitalization, becomes a franchise. And if you want to think about franchises are like McDonald's. If you know anything about McDonald's, you know that you can actually have a McDonald's, but you need a certain amount of money to not only have one, that's to pay to use the franchise, and also you're going to need to give them a cut of whatever is being made, and you have to get the products that you need, like the burgers and the fries, from them. So then you need to be able to, you see, so McDonald's is a pretty tough business, and if you sell out, in this case, with that type of franchise, then you would have probably sold many souls up the river of having bad health. So there seems to be also this entwining with large corporations that are predatory. And I want to make this very clear, because some may just see commerce altogether as predatory. And that's why you would throw the baby out with the bathwater. But you got to realize that commerce is also the distinguishment of value between tribes. Okay, so back in the day, that different tribes can produce different things and became known for those things. And they were able to not only maintain themselves amongst the groups of tribes, if you may, but they were also able to themselves have something that was very unique to them, and that became their industry. And if you know anything about the Phoenicians, even that purple dye was enough to create an industry, just as tulips was enough to create an industry for a moment. But what I'm saying is that when you can produce something that is very rare, then it gives and assigns value to you and who represents it. So just at its core level, we have to understand that the biggest issue that we're dealing with is those that come forward actually not even giving any value, but more than anything demanding input. And as I said, with the corporations and things, it's like, give us your money, and then you get something that is pretty undervalued back. Also, I wanted to just very briefly address that it's never a day that I don't go, especially when I'm doing these sessions. And sometimes I wish people would, think about, maybe giving me a break sometimes, because if I say, hey, we're going to talk about money, I'm probably going to have 9 conversations about money. If I'm going to talk about sovereignty, I'm probably going to have that many conversations about sovereignty. So this one happens to be, because it surrounds financial decisions, et cetera, it happens to be about money. But even before then, there's not a day that goes by that I don't get a very rude comment, most of the time from a male, about why are we charging for spirituality? My first answer to that question will always be, we're not. Actually, you cannot charge anyone for a spirit because they cannot receive it. At the end of the day, what we're doing is we're thinking of a very symbiotic way to continue to continue this mission while also fulfilling some of the desires of those that have participated and stated that they would want certain things. This is a 14, 14 year journey for us. And in that journey, there have been many costs and expenses during the journey at minimum time. And I find it interesting, though, that especially since a lot of these comments come from men, that I really don't understand how it's not our responsibility, especially the men's responsibility, since they've taken on that role, to actually take care of the children and actually take care of the women and take care of the mothers and the grandmothers. I just don't understand that. So meaning that if a man could come to another man and ask him, why do you have a form of livelihood? It's a pretty strange time. The other thing is that I want to also zoom this into something more specific. Many know Charles Hoskinson from Cardano. And I always see Charles as more of like the father of Cardano, and the rest of everybody else more of like, the children that are in many ways believing in what the father is bringing forth and the success of the venture. And to be honest, I see myself very similar in that way in Secret Energy and in all that we do. I'm now 44, so I'm almost 44. I'm 43, so I think I'm still a little bit young. I definitely feel young, but in every respect, this has been 14 years. So I have seen many grow from the level of actually having almost little recognition of what's going on in the world, all the way into full-grown adepts, or adults as we call them. So in that way, I feel like that I do have a responsibility for this tribe to make sure that in every single arena that is important to sustain this tribe. And what constitutes a member of the tribe is anyone who comes across that gateway and signs up for this platform and begins to start that process of transforming their lives. And the real deal with the future that we're going into is the reason why Secret Energy Foundation is being erected and Creator DAO, et cetera, is because there's probably going to be a big transition that comes here soon to the platforms. We're also aware that there's a lot of laws that have been changed. It kind of started with GDPR, or where they started making it where you can delete a person's data if they requested it, and many other things. And they started fining people for doing that. And then now they're creating more and more red tape for being able to even put up a website. You can see that more and more now in the app stores. And then ultimately you can see that if your system is not decentralized here soon, then it won't be able to run unless you are completely in compliance. And a lot of that compliance, as I mentioned before, it has to do with this whole narrative of global warming. And this just means that every business that is operating in some fields of consumption or classified in certain ways have to become certified that they are green. And being green is going to constitute actually utilizing equipment and utilizing things that they have available in their supply chain, because that's how franchises work. So we had this immense period. I think it's been about, I don't know, maybe 50 years, barely much time, but still some time to actually really get ourselves together. The first part was just to educate, and many of our parents, maybe some of our grandparents, did the best thing they could to educate us about what was really going on in the world. The thing about it is that even this information that we're producing about Lex Mercatoria, it has actually been in circulation, especially amongst some of the older groups, like even the Protestant clans and the Mormon clans, stuff that was going on way before we even got here. They were already aware that this was going on. So it's very interesting how, again, and tried to leave warnings, wrote books and these kind of things. But it's interesting how none of that information really made it to the mainstream, even all the way up until this point. This video, as number one, has 17,000 views on it. So that means out of 9 billion people, only 17,000 people have even caught wind of what is really going on from someone who really knows how to deliver it. And probably even few, if you looked at video number 2, you'll probably get even a more broader idea, or maybe more of a minuscule idea of just how many people are actually participating in their sovereign growth. We've actually also been on for now 4 sessions, and I can pretty much say 80% of the group that's here, maybe 70%, are pre-existing members and pre-existing ambassadors versus the amount of people that are coming into the space from external sources. Also, if you are here coming into the space from external channels, we give thanks for you. Also know that we believe that for sure that everything is about resonance. So if you found yourself in the space today, then it definitely has a message for you. And what I try to do every time is give you something that whether we ever see you again or not, you can definitely go on with that and prosper. So as I mentioned earlier, time being the only integer that is compensation, or is an integer that you should be compensated for. Before I even get into that, one of the other things that I wanted to mention is by default, according to this system, this legal structure, et cetera, by default, the thing that everybody provides that they don't even have to do anything to provide is data. It's data, okay? So I'll center into that just very briefly to make that very clear. When a form is filled out, you're putting data on that form. Okay, so the mother is asked to put in data to fill in this information. So at the most basic level, what the system really can use to forward and fuel its I don't know what you want to call what it's doing, but to forward and fuel its structure is data. And it's very important for you to remember that, because out of all the other things that it can get from you, from your time, your energy making you mad, your time, again, meaning that your skills, these kind of things, at bare minimum, it wants the data. And this is exactly probably would explain to us why social media networks as they are exist in the first place. And we've already caught wind of this, but that Facebook and even WhatsApp and many of these applications are really harvesting the data. But it's not just for marketing. Yes, they can sell it. That is a secondary market for them. But it's actually that if you notice, even during World War II and many other times throughout history, there has seemed to be these long stints of experimentation on human beings, especially when there's a major upgrade. Right? There's a major change in society, some type of technology or form of finance is introduced, and it kind of totally metamorphosizes the society into something new. And then when that happens, there now needs to be research. And so that those words are interesting because research and revenue all hint to something that is saying that. So revenue is revenue, and research is to kind of remove the truth almost so that people have to search again, or remove the way that things would be before in order to now create something new that needs to be searched again. And that's what I was saying about realities, is that when they change, which is like a move on a Rubik's Cube, when they change, sometimes when you come back to them, you won't recognize them from last time because they made a change, because they've been researched and they've been revenued. This is also a form of commerce, as they call it, revenue. So we have then two things. We have states, as we talked about earlier, where what kind of state are you in? And then based on your state, then your revenue, a revenue or revision can also take place where everything about your state is changed again. So this is what kind of creates disorientation for people. We talked about this earlier again, as when chaos is being caused, it's generally because people are starting to break even. People are starting to figure out what's going on. So now there needs to be a revision, there needs to be research, and there needs to be revenue or revenue. And all of this needs to be also processed through every state, because every state is a form of consciousness. So you know how, let me make this even simpler. You know how, like, even in marketing, they try to get you to figure out who your target audience is, because your target audience is in the state of consciousness for your product. And of course, the biggest marketing teams actually know how to grab the lion's share or push the buttons that everyone will, or a large percentage of people will agree with, because they're all, or a majority of them are in that state. Oftentimes there's a polarization in society because if they can just get it in two states, which is the preference, a 50-50 is a civil war. So just two states, Republican or Democrat, red or blue, Pepsi or Coca-Cola, just two states is the most optimal for them because one, confusion can always be created in the dual form. That is, of course, the benefit and the weakness of the number two. So it could be dualistic. Right. And then also in that stage of two, it's not gone yet into the next stage, which, of course, is unity. Right. When there's more than just two. And if you've ever tried to solve a problem, adding a third person into that as an arbitrator, that's why all legal contracts always have that line that says, hey, in the event that you guys don't get along with this, we're saying that first this is going to go to an arbitrator. Then we're going to go to the court, right? And so that's just a mode of resolution, is to have that third component. But this system, it loves the dual. Also, as I mentioned before, that seems to be even a worship of death within this society as far as the Western world. In fact, the West is known as the place where the sun sets. And symbolically in Egypt, that was like a dying of the sun. And then, as you notice, the entire religion is based around a very construed version of a dying of a son. And the father even commanding the son to go and die, which is also more of a military thing, where a soldier, which, as we said, is also a dying son, soul dyer. A soldier is commanded by the general to go and die. And the reality is that when we wake up from, this illusion, we realize that even the conflicts that we're having with each other is basically this system sending us at each other so that we come into conflict. So I was also saying, again, for the record, that for those that felt like we were also very geared financially, especially these days, and that's making up a part of our conversation, it is because I have assisted so many people financially. I have actually even run personally to my yield point of being able to not assist much more and maintain also what we have currently. And I could always say that when somebody needs assistance, it seems like they're very excited to get it, and they also feel relieved. But when there is no assistance to be given, it feels like that almost all hope is lost. So Secret Energy has decided, instead of going into the what you would call indigent, nonprofit state of consciousness, begging for someone to help build these amazing things that are going to get us all out of this crap that we're in, we've decided to actually take on that responsibility too. And that would mean taking on the responsibility of making sure that we create a system that makes that happen amongst many other things, hence the term toroidal economy. So I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share really briefly here and go through a few things that I wanted to show. And then also, if you do have any questions, feel free to write them down. And then in the end of the build, we will ask for anyone that wants to put that question here in the chat to do so. And then we will answer that question. So that means if you hear something that may not make sense or that you have more questions about, just go ahead and write it down and we'll get to you. So first and foremost, again, this is now inside of the university, so you can dive in when you wish and stick with it. As I mentioned earlier, we will now be going through this for a few months. We get through stuff pretty fast, but over the next 2 months at least, Secret Energy, specifically ambassador training, will begin to study this Lex Mercatoria and the solutions around becoming what we know as a live beneficiary again. And then we will keep pioneering this till we get to cosmic law, because you would have to be able to cross over everything in Lex Mercatoria as the base or netherworld level of law, because this is the bottom. Lex Mercatoria and what is happening is all based on the netherworld. It's all based on people being dead already. It's all based on that kind of stuff. So that's, to me, a good place to start. I wouldn't start at the top and then try to get to that. I will go right to the source of most of the distortion and build from there. So that's here for you. And of course, that is someone else's work. We have sourced their work. We also have sourced the materials that they've included, because there is an audio copy, just in case for those that, need to download this and just ride out to it and won't have internet connection. You can get it. And then there's a manual. I'm actually in process of gaining some more manuals as I'm liaising with the group at Gemstone. But there are manuals here that are overviews of exactly what the knowledge is bringing. So if you're one of those people that really just like to read stuff more so than you like to listen to it, then that's also there for you. So there's no excuses. That's what I'm saying. There's no excuses. So the first thing that I want to get at here is, again, our process of beta testing what would be later on become the toroidal or circular economy. And what this was centered around is, as I mentioned earlier in our previous builds, it was centered around the study of gamification and the awareness that the word gamification was everything but a game. That gamification is actually used in society every single day. It is the biggest driver for society, with titles and rewards and recognition. And that there's a part of us psychologically that actually responds very well to gamification. And when it's not around, we actually feel unappreciated, because gamification really surrounds things like, again, giving recognition to someone who has done something, acknowledging that a person is even present, rewarding on things that actually do take time or energy, or gestures of kindness. So these type of touch points are necessary within everything to do with a society. So gamification was completely explored. It was researched, and the gentleman even won a Nobel Peace Prize, just kind of taking it apart. I did get the opportunity, once the inception of cryptocurrency took place, to go through that tutelage. And when I came out of it, I realized that you could run this kind of structure of gamification, or try it out, or beta test it without cryptocurrency. Even though it was becoming very popular then. And as you see, it did completely trend now with many of the play to earn platforms. But we began by awarding incentives for mindfulness. And in this case, we were giving ohms. This is the network protocol, which is redeemable for anything inside of the network that has value or monetary value. And so we began with sign up and earn, and the context around that, because I'm just going to explain a few of these and why they're not just like, hey, go and do this, and they don't actually mean anything for us. Because the thing is it's a symbiotic relationship. So we're saying that when we're giving you ohms, there's a value to those ohms. More specifically, there's a value of $3.60 for a sign up. So when somebody signs up for the platform, they give $3.60. They receive 360 ohms, which is roughly accrued to the value of $3.60, with each ohm representing 1 penny. And that's how we pegged ohms. Okay, so they always say that, when you have something stable, it needs to be pegged. We were doing this, but we did it with our own network protocol to begin beta testing this circular economy, where we're awarding users for mindfulness. And so right off, there is a perceived value of every person that interacts with what you are presenting, just so you know, in gamification. Anybody that even stops for a moment to read or to listen to what you're saying, it is good for you to determine what is their value to you. How much are they really worth to you? And so where that comes from is also in marketing. You'll notice that they charge you based on how many impressions that you receive. So in that same context, if you were to pay for that person to come to the platform to actually see what you are doing, that's why I said most social networks should be paying you. How much is that worth? And that's a number that you have to decide within your ecosystem based on the value of your ecosystem. So that can range anywhere from 80 cents all the way to $5 is what we've seen those ranges. So we're kind of pegged right in the center at 360 ohms. For us, it's a nice number. It rings. It's a circle in itself. And we begin. So from that point, also what you're doing is you're extending the gesture first. Notice how there's some people that they won't talk to you unless you ask them a question first. So they're not very forthcoming. And so in this case, what we're saying is that we're going to give you the gesture of your value first, whether you utilize it or know what it is. So that's the sign up and earn. We also have rate and earn, and that is to go through the site and to look through our respective directories, which I'm not going to show all that here now. I just wanted to just really explain the logic of the gamification. So we have rate and earn, where through the platform, there are advisors, there are soul coaches, there are other websites that we're recommending and stations, etc. And we give you ohms for rating those particular outlets. And the reason is because we ultimately wanted to create a very refined and estranged list of advisors, websites, stations, and things that you can really trust, that when from the group wisdom, that when you went into that space, that you would find a similar experience, maybe even. And then also maybe a little bit of red flag that if you did enter into a space that you already knew, like a product on Amazon, if the product is like 2 stars and, they just got you anyway and you buy it and it falls apart, then, you'll be a part of why it's got 2 stars in the comments. You see what I mean? So we wanted to create something to where we could begin to create a group consensus of, what is really on and off base inside of the conscious communities, respectively. And we also have buy and earn, and that is a system that rewards ohms based on every purchase. So you can see that almost like the cash back feature in most credit cards, even though they take that back in interest. But hey, that's how they work it. But for us, we extend a certain portion back to any person that makes a purchase. We also have level up and earn. That means that the platform is completely gamified, so you can actually go through the stretch goals, like how many times you've signed in 3 months, how many things that you've actually rated. So there's an entire system here, and that system is actually laid out. I think I'm going to have someone build another version. It's laid out in Miro, so it looks like a huge map of all of the quests and journeys on Secret Energy. We also wanted to have some Easter eggs in there, so maybe we'll just remove those. But soon in the future, we will post that whole gamification map. And I think it actually would be very awesome to open source it also, because this took me years to just keep tweaking and refining, because you also have to remember that, because if these are redeemed for products in the store and products also cost us money, we have to balance out with how we can even afford to do this. That's going to become more apparent here in a moment when I speak of just the affiliation itself. But as we continue, we have where, of course, you can redeem all of these ohms directly for products, not profit yet, but for products, where there's 140 products that are inside of the store. We also have log in and earn, and that means for your daily participation, if you want to jump in, you want to make some comments, you want to check out some other members that are here, then you will receive that consecutive reward for logging in. We also have the exchange, which allows you to exchange ohms into joules, which is more of a storage protocol. I know some may be asking or thinking right away, will this eventually become Secret Energy's token? And of course, we put that through heavy consideration. That's actually why we have to beta test this stuff, because the moment that you start putting it into where you open up a gateway where a person can now redeem it for something like Ethereum, you need to make sure something like this is sound, or else, it could mean you're going to zero pretty fast. But we do have goals to incorporate our very powerful actionables in with our native token when we launch it. But as of now, ohms is here, and it is a protocol inside the platform, and that's what allows it to be completely legal. We will also have gifting ohms, a big part of the platform. When we bring in our live stream widgets, we're actually going to allow users, we're going to kind of beta test it first with certain users, mainly soul coaches, and then we're going to roll it out to the platform gradually. But this means that you'll be able to jump on live and actually do what you do. So if you practice yoga at a certain time in the morning, or you paint and you just want to turn it on and let others, enjoy what it is that you're doing, then we also will give the ability for them to gift you ohms, and that also gives you an ability to acquire certain things in the platform that may assist you in sustaining yourself. As you can see, ultimately, when that flips into the create token, then that will be even more interesting because it will allow you to be able to redeem that for Ethereum. But again, with these kind of things, you really want to test them out first and see how they work, and then weight them properly. That's just weighting of the values. And then when you get something that really works, you want to release it out of beta. And the benefit of us being able to really utilize ohms for so long now, I think it's been 6 years. It also really gives us a lot of knowledge about what to do and what not to do, and puts us closer to be able to implementing something like our own token. And then finally, we have share and earn, and that, of course, is a big driver for how many of the users inside the platform are actually earning commissions, because it's so simple to do. There are share and earn buttons that are actually located within every aspect of the site where something can be shared, such as blog posts, such as new videos, such as products. So every asset on the platform that can be shared actually has a share and earn button. And then what you're able to do with that share to earn button is you're actually when it's pressed is that it actually connects to your, and I kind of got my system on low bandwidth here today just to try to save bandwidth, but basically what it does is it converts well, let's let the screen here loaded, but it converts your affiliate ID to the product's URL automatically. So if you find a share and earn button, which we'll see here in a moment, I think there's actually one up here, then you will actually be able to do that. So I'll let that go ahead and do its thing. As I mentioned, I kind of have some stuff going on here in the studio, so my bandwidth is a little weak, but I'll keep going. Also, you will find that every user actually has their affiliate link inside of their platform settings page. And let me just reboot this because I had to come out of my admin account, which doesn't have it, but here's one here. And as you'll see, your affiliate link is always available to you on your settings page. Give me a thumbs up to the redesign that's also gone on here on this page. So you can copy your link and share it directly, and that'll actually allow a person to come to the platform and then be listed under you. But more importantly, we wanted to really make this not only karma-free, but also unobtrusive. The other term, I also wanted to mention that why do we call it karma-free wealth? And it's because that if we create something that is actually assisting people, so if a person takes supplements that help their body and fix issues and problems that they have, then you're not selling them something that is hurting them. You see what I mean? So it's free of karma, because in many ways, like if you look at the standard job, I mean, next to being a dope dealer or a drug dealer, like most of these companies are that. They sell bad products that harm people, the environment, the whole nine. But the proponent of that could be at times you. It could be at times me. And so this process of getting out of these systems is something that we're actually working on. That's what the Creator DAO and the Secret Energy Foundation actually is. It's the process that you need to go through all of the things that you're going to need. And I have got some comments also over the past few days of people who are just kind of burnt out on this right now. They're like, oh man, I don't want to hear anything else about NFTs. I don't want to hear anything else. And it's just that kind of attitude. And it's like, okay, that's not me though. I have to keep going with this because I'm already smart enough to know that all of these pieces are needed in order to create the whole. And that's the same thing with us, even that the more of us are together, that's the more we get closer to creating the whole. We also figured out that you can do that individually. It is rather tough, but you can actually create a complete being out of yourself. And then also you can get into small groups, mainly those that predominantly consist of 9 people, and try to create the whole from there. And then also we can try to create an entire platform of not only people who are doing that, but tools that actually promote that actually happening. But either way, it's got to happen, because then people are starting to focus and function more like they're unified rather than that they're separate. And so that has been an uphill battle. People have racial issues. There are spiritual issues. There are all types of issues going on. There's lots of forms of conflict in this reality. So really going through these processes at times is like going through a minefield. You don't really want to trigger someone the wrong way because you know it means that they're leaving. But at the same time, you can't really hold back on the truth. So you have to accept that through this process, you're going to gain people and you're going to lose people. Some of those people that you lose are going to come back again. So the process is pretty interesting, though, because even when we get on closed forums, for instance, like ambassador training, where we deliver lots of gems, it's important, though, to be in that private forum. I'm going to take a moment just to explain that before I forget. See, let's imagine that you have a cup. And you can fill this cup with anything. And so technically you want to fill it with the thing that has the most value. But the amount that the cup can hold is the same. So if I fill this cup full of lifeless dirt versus I fill up the cup of the same size with gold, which one is more valuable? But they take up the same space. So that's why we've always been in the mode of quality versus quantity. Because we know that the more of a quality experience that we can create, even if it's not huge, it has more value. And rather than trying to get 1 million views, I believe that it's a good idea to keep driving in that direction to create more exclusivity, more rarity, and more value in the things that we do. And then when someone says that they want to join, that they're actually knowing what the value is of what they're joining. Because that's another thing. If you just let people come in your house and, they kick their feet up on your white couch, or, they go into your refrigerator and open up a couple things, throw it on the counter. I mean, who does that, right? But some people, you could allow people to do that and they will do you like that. Meaning that you have to be able to set what is the value of what you're doing. And so after 14 years, I start seeing Secret Energy as more of like a very exclusive experience. I'm definitely seeing Creator DAO and Secret Energy Foundation as more of an exclusive experience. And the more that we can continue to operate on the private side and move out this whole public sector, the more we're actually creating value in what we're doing. And then anyone that wants to come and be a part of that is able to actually bring the value into it that it's worth, rather than it being like a flop house or a liquor store where everybody can walk in and just do whatever they want. So for me, I'm more in the direction of creating something that people really understand what the value of it is, rather than just creating something that people just walk all over and it just gets that kind of feel. So we want to continuously create a lot of quality in what we're doing. So I'm going to keep going here. So we also have, as we've gone through this process, so we're going through stages here. So the first part of this stage was no gamification and then implement gamification. Check, done. Okay, so that was quite a bit to get through, but we got through it. Then it was open up the affiliation, as we call it, unobtrusive marketing, so that way others can share in the benefits of actually bringing others into the platform and the things that the platform is creating. At the minimum, we give 9% commissions to our affiliates of the total value of the sale. We give 12% commissions to our ambassadors of the total value of the sale. And sometimes somebody will even look at that 9% number and say, oh man, 9%, until they see Keggin Waters 3%, or until you understand that 9% is actually 30% when you do the math, because we have to restock the product. We have to pay for the shipping, and we have to absorb any costs of the product getting lost. So it's not actually 9%. That's what it comes out to, because that's the total number. But if you could see how much was invested in the product from buying it, and then also what was invested in shipping the product, and then also what was invested to cover any type of loss, you would actually be able to readjust that 9% number and realize that it's actually around 30%. And that's why these bigger organizations, they give out very small percentages of commissions. Go look at Amazon. It oftentimes doesn't become enough for the standard person to make even a secondary income. while what we've done is we've actually created something that just flat out people don't use. I see people that make money off of this, and sometimes they're not even members of the platform just because they know, oh, wow, that those commissions are pretty high, and that's a pretty strong product spread. And what I mean also by that is that we have exclusive products that aren't anywhere else on the internet and that have been researched and developed and homegrown here. And that continues. Now we'll be releasing cosmic clocks, vector equilibriums. We have Simify, we have Illumify, which are consumer electronics. So for us, there is an industry actually here, but we wanted to create what we call flagships. And what flagships are products that are predominantly developed by the faction itself, and that way there's an exclusivity around it. And then also a product that we manufacture ourselves, because it's a totally different position to be in the to be that of a manufacturer versus someone who is a distributor. Okay, so distributor versus manufacturer, price ranges are totally different. So if we can manufacture products, then we can actually extend higher commissions on those products. Our last product was Hydrolux, and we extended a $50 commission every unit that was sold of Hydrolux. So that is a strong bump from the 9 or 12%. And so that's the goal for us, is that we want to continue to not only pioneer products, but also develop things that have value outside of the community that the community can then feel proud about representing, so that they can begin to generate more karma-free wealth, and then hopefully get to a stage where they actually are able to offset their predatory work and actually engage in something that will bring them more wholeness. So that is the vision around what we have designed and developed. What I was getting at here in relation to the professionals is I also decided to begin the process, because certain things, like if you think about gamification, it took us 2 years to completely tweak that system. It was 4 months for it to be designed, so that way we can put it in. It was 4 months so that it can be designed so we can put it in. And then there was almost a year and a half after that for us to tweak it. So what I learned is that you want to, especially if something is pretty much complete from one side and it just needs to be beta tested, you want to make it live as soon as possible so that you can start going through the process. There is actually a new design for all of these pages that contain things like the professional directory. And what the professional directory is that if you toggle it on, which you can do inside of your profile down here, you can actually be listed inside of this directory, which is a professional directory, meaning so if you have a profession, if you meditate, if you're a life coach, if you are a photographer, you would list that. And then you can also list how much you would want to make per hour to do that. And then you can link up with other tribe members that are geared up to be able to assist you in any of these specific categories that are listed here. And again, the benefit of this is that, one, you always get that filter that you're dealing with someone that is conscious and on point, at least on the level enough. And then also you have an input output here, because those that have a profession but really want to attract more conscious people into their client base, then this is available to do that. And as we're populating here, which means there's quite a few of us are now in this directory, what we can begin to do is actually, one, when we are developing projects inside of Secret Energy, we can recruit directly from our own LinkedIn, right? And then also we can begin to, what we would say is debut many of the skill-based creators that are inside the platform, similar to the way that we do soul coaches, as we form more affiliations with the digital assets. So this is, as I said before, this takes years to actually do. And that's what you would kind of be dealing with when you get on with a startup, is that they would basically be saying this is what they wanted to do, and then none of this would be developed out or tested yet, and there wouldn't actually even be real people in it in most cases. So where we're at is that we've devved it out, we've tested it. We have one more graphical upgrade that we're putting into the platform that's quite immense but looks amazing, including dark mode, if anybody has been wondering about that. And then once we're done with that, then we get a chance to really launch, because it's already been tested versus launching into beta. I also wanted to mention that we have soul coaches in the platform, and what makes soul coaching is so dynamic is I really got tired of the model where you pay for the education, but then you got to go and find your own job. Which is kind of weird. It's like, it's just weird all the way around, because you kind of rack up some debt just in the education, and then you got to go and find a job. And then you're also paying for the bills of what the education costs. I just found, as I knew many folks in college, still know folks in college, that they all seem to still be paying their college debt like it's their house note or something like that, right? So this is that intervention where we're saying, well, we're still metaphysicians, so that's what we do. So that's the only thing that we can really say proficiently that we train on, if you may. But anybody coming through this process of becoming a soul coach, we then not only feature, which that means that everybody that's coming through the platform that wants a soul coach will have then our soul coaches to choose from. So we are providing them the education and the experience, if you may, because the most important thing to become a soul coach is that you just be you. So we provide that experience to the expression of being self, and then we also give the ability for you to be able to assist others that find that connection with what you're doing. And so I think that's amazing, because again, we provide the atmosphere, we provide if there's any level of skills in education, and then we provide also the space to where clients are going to come from. And we want to continue that. And a lot of the stuff that we have is also still contingent upon some of the adoption levels that we receive in each respective field. So meaning that the more people that are coming into the platform and utilizing what's in the platform, the more even these soul coaches will have more people to coach. And that kind of brings me to this point about why I explore other fields beyond the conscious community, because I feel like that we can also introduce many amazing things in other spaces. Many are aware that, we've gone deep into gaining our own access to diffusion models, which are AI on the levels of text to image and text conceptualization, or basically being able to use AI to write large parts of books based on topics and then illustrate and then really do the heavy lifting from the thinking and the uniqueness of the work, but not have to do that repetitive and sometimes unequipped part of bringing something to completion. So those are things that we're exploring that allow or attract others from different spaces into our nucleus. And then when they come into our nucleus, sometimes they can just kind of remain on the rift, like, okay, yeah, I just came in here for text to image, and they're kind of doing that. And then sometimes they kind of go into the footer, or they see that the in the menu in the header or something going on, and then they eventually become users of the site, and some of them actually take on soul coaches. So for us, all of the brilliant things that we can create actually bring more awareness to all of the tribe. And so that way, when we're all drivers for each other's success, then it's like everybody actually is doing something that creates the ability for us all to have our lives enhanced. And so that's exactly what's happening with this community. It's gone exceptionally well so far, and we have even more to come. And I just wanted to kind of unveil one of the things that I've personally been working on based on a conceptualization of what I wanted to do inside of our digital marketplace. And so let me see here. There we go. Okay. Toroidal economies. Okay, so what this is about is the ability to, let me see, how can I even explain this? I want to explain this as simple as possible because it could seem a little complicated, but it's actually ingenious. And how this works is that imagine if you could recruit not only the people who want it done, but also the person that, or the people that will do it, and then produce something from that will allow everybody that participated, the people who wanted it done and the people who did it, or the person that did it, to gain revenues from whatever was produced, and then to have those revenues shared in percentages amongst those groups and that group automatically on the blockchain. Okay. So that's kind of like the first idea of this, right? And so I'm going to try to do this again because it's the toroidal economy. And I'm going to do this by an example. So let's say that I want a book to be written about lucid dreaming. Okay. I want it to be very researched. And then when done, I want to use these. I want it to be complete into like a course. Lucid dreaming. Let's just say that. And so as one person, I may want that. And then I can say how much I'm willing to pay for that. I could say, you know what? I have $1,000 on that. And let's say, for instance, it's going to take $5,000 to get it done, though, which as the person who wants something done, I need to know how much I'm willing to pay and how much it really costs to get it done. And that's why you have these financial metrics and advisors around you. And they can say, okay, well, it's going to cost $5,000 to get that done. So then you can open this project up because that's what makes the project open source. And you can say, we will allow 20 people to invest $500 each or whatever to getting this project complete. And those 20 people will predominantly be people who want that material themselves. I could have had a better example here. I just thought of one. But anyway, I'll keep going with this. And so what you end with, and I'll just kind of talk about the end game, is what you end with is you end with one, an actual product. Two, the investors are generally initially satisfied because they received that product. Three, the person who created that product is generally satisfied because that's a form of income for them. And they've been able to produce something that is in their skill set and their profession. And then four, that everybody gets a chance to benefit because that product can then be placed into the digital marketplace. So for even the investor, it's a win. For the purchaser, the person who purchased it, it's a win-win situation for them because not only do they get whatever it is that they want, they also get a percentage of how much it makes indefinitely. So this is the main component of the toroidal economy. And I'm actually happy to say that it has already been really coded in and it's ready to deploy. I know that was quite fast, but it turns out that that's the whole benefit of blockchain is that, or this blockchain space, is because codes are generally open source. So when you find something that works a certain way and then another thing that works another way, you just bring your developers in and then they put them together in like a Frankenstein, especially with Web3, and then now it does what you need it to do. So in this case, as you know, every NFT is basically a non-fungible token or a digital asset, but it doesn't have to be a picture. It could be a course. It could be some music, etc. And imagine, like, let's say, for instance, if you're an artist and you say, well, I need $5,000 to shoot my video or finish my tape. And for that, you will get not only that video or that tape, you will also get the proceeds of that music selling in the marketplace, a certain percentage. So for that person, it's for every party, it's a benefit because one, someone may just want to help you and like your music and want to see it get complete and then get that music. And then for them too, the win for them is that they also now are able to make revenues also from their investment. For the person who wanted to make the music, it's a big benefit for them because they wouldn't have had the capital in order to make that music if it didn't come from those investors. And then for the marketplace, it's a huge benefit because it now has another asset inside the marketplace. And obviously, there's generally a small fee because that's what the utility is. And when you have a utility that has small fees associated with it, then you can even legally now move into having a protocol, which is really what the goal is. But I also have designed these kind of things in a way where the creative component can really thrive because there's so many things that if you really sit down and think of that would really work, but you oftentimes need several different types of people to make it work. You need the one with the finances, and you need the ones that know how to do it. And you got to have something that puts them all together in this interest to get it done. So there's never like somebody feels like, well, yeah, I'm the investor, and if it wasn't for me, it wouldn't be a project. Actually, and more in this case, especially with really good ideas, the investors will pile in, and then the event will be locked at that point, or the crowd fund, if you may, would be locked, because it's only asking for a certain amount of people to jump in, and then that amount is generally based on a calculation of how much the profits are going to be and how much the returns are going to be, and those kind of things, more so than it's just open indefinitely until we raise that amount of capital. So I would love to get this to a stage to where I can actually beta test it for everyone and show you exactly how it works, because it's not as easy to explain. You kind of need that final part of the interface where you see the jobs or the requests of creating something, and then those people answering those requests. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a moment, and I'm going to answer questions around just the toroidal economy and what was actually presented today. As I said before, my goal is to just come into the space. We do have 5 more events. We're actually going to have an event where I talk a little bit about spiritual technologies, etc. But today was just to give everyone a clear view, especially for those that don't know anything about the platform, exactly how we have implemented a circular economy already, and how we plan to scale that and eventually get to a toroidal economy where there is a digital asset marketplace based on the creations, and everything is kind of tied in perfectly, where there's an automated process of how each person would not only enter what they have, but also receive the proper compensations for what they've engaged in. So I see there's already some questions inside the chat. So let me just take a moment. Let me get a drink of water. Again, if you are in the space today and you do have a question about anything related to this project, you can actually ask that question inside of the chat. I am asking that you place the word question before that. That way I can actually know which ones are the questions. Okay, so I'm going to begin. Someone asked, I have a Discord channel, just a group of friends that I would like to model after Secret Energy. Is there advice on how to set up so that when communities can be made from Creator DAO, we will be ready for that by then? For sure. Yeah, I actually would just advise to begin to research about the DAO. I personally would recommend Super DAO. You can go to YouTube and you can type Super DAO, and they have we got in with Super DAO right almost in the beginning of when they came out of beta. And I watched, the thing that I was fascinated about Yuri over at Super DAO was the first video I watched from Yuri. He explained everything about the DAO that was the thing after so many conversations with others that I still didn't get. And he covered everything in that first conversation. It was almost felt like to me that everybody I was talking to didn't really know what they were talking about yet, because they hadn't actually done it. Versus Yuri over at Super DAO, shouts out to Yuri. He's a master in it. He knows what he's doing, and he's recruited, because I think they raised 11 million, but they raised 11 million at Super DAO. And so that was his second exit, meaning that he had some other projects that he had already developed on the blockchain and was able to exit those projects. And so in that way, he has the experience and he has the connections. So the people that you see coming across that channel, even though the channel doesn't have a ton of views, welcome to YouTube, they know a lot about how to work with decentralized autonomous organizations and just the overall field of the DAO and the technologies that are available to you. Now, obviously, what we would like to begin to do once we set up our charter properly, we get our governance model in, is set up sub-DAOs. So in the future, if you are interested in being a sub-DAO of Creator DAO, then that for sure will be something that we will explore, because that's also what we were encouraged to do. Also, the same thing with, remember, we're Creator DAO. So our goal is to educate and teach and implement how to create something from start to finish. So even like with the NFT, I found that process to be a little weird. Like it wasn't as straightforward as I thought. Like I was seeing all these people on YouTube and it just seemed like that they just had made up these pictures and then they just uploaded it and it was on OpenSea. And that is one way, but that has nothing, that's more or less a one-on-one. It has nothing to do with what needs to happen with collections. It has nothing to do with what needs to happen with metadata. And even those kind of videos seem to be super boring and still didn't get to the point. So we actually formed a pretty good bond with NFT Generator as they continue to roll out their Web3 applications and their contracts in a box, basically. And I went through the whole process myself. It was a little complicated for me. I ain't gonna lie. Like there were points that I just felt dumb. So, expect that. But the reality is that because we went through it, then we kind of know exactly what a person's talking about when they're saying, hey, this is not working, or how do I do this? And then also a lot of this has to do with unifying the systems that are being used. Like there's different ways to create an NFT, but if we're all using the same NFT creation service, then it's easy to educate. Oh, you're right in that field. We can build help docs around that, and it makes the process a lot easier. So for us also, it just so happens that, again, we didn't want to launch on the Polygon blockchain. We just didn't want to kind of nerf this project before it got started because it is a prestigious project in my world, and Polygon is somewhat of a blockchain for different types of projects. And SuperDAO predominantly works with Polygon. However, they have assured us that by August the 10th, that they will be implementing ERC20, ERC20, ERC27, 21, and basically all Ethereum applications or integrations to allow Creator DAO to go forward with utilizing SuperDAO to host a lot of the things that we're actually doing inside the DAO, such as the proposals and wallets and transfers and all of those things. So that's what I have for that question. Question is it possible to solely fund a project rather than seeking X amount of investors? That's a good question. I realized that was somewhat of a mode of thinking that in certain ways is a little bit premature to how business works, let's say, for instance. And the reason is because, when I was younger, for sure, and that only was like 5 years ago, but no, when I was younger, it was always this idea to have not only your own business, but to not have partners. Like in this mindset that because if you didn't have any partners, then you wouldn't have to split the money. But I'm here to tell you that you also can't split the workload because there's no partners. So what happens is that there's kind of like this thing that goes on where you may not be looking for like angel investors or to go public, but to truly scale something, unless you're already a multimillionaire. And if you are, it generally means at this stage that you knew how to scale something. So notice how like one kind of comes before the other. It's like a multimillionaire that wants to have their own business and have no partners. How did they get that? How did they get those multi-millions? They didn't get those multi-millions being the only investor of the only company that they have. Either it was willed to them or they already were in a business and then they saw after a partnership and then finally sold that business, split it between partners. And then now maybe they're choosing to go forward in the revenue and not have investors in that revenue or in that, have investors in that venture. What I would say is that also it really depends on the scale of what you're trying to do for sure. Like, there's reasons why people make short videos versus blockbuster films, right? And if you're going to make a short video, you may be able to handle that on your own, but a blockbuster film, I mean, you can't be in front of the camera and hold the camera at the same time, and it's going to be a blockbuster. Like, I haven't seen no selfie blockbusters. So at the end of the day, it is really about the scale ultimately that determines whether or not you're going to need to seek investors. Now, I like the question, though, because this is where the DAO is so empowering. And it's just because that instead of it being like a crowd fund, because we have to remember that in most crowd funds, it's kind of gotten very sour, the term crowd fund, because first of all, a lot of crowd funds don't deliver. We know 71% of the projects on Kickstarter don't deliver. Go look at the comments section. It's off the chain. If you ever want to really see how brutal humanity can be, Go read the comment section on a high investing product on Kickstarter that probably will not deliver. Okay. And so the truth to the matter is that it just really requires us, when we're setting out to develop something, for us to check boxes of so many different things that are also necessary to put a product out and bring a product to market. I kind of lost my train of thought there. Excuse me, everyone. It has been a wild time. Like it seems to be for me, because I just jumped out of a meeting with developers. I kind of crashed into this meeting. The God bleeds. Like, I'm definitely human too. So sometimes I've been like, my brain just feels like it's scrambling, but let me just center myself and come with it. So I guess, again, just to finalize that question, the reality is that when you are working with a project, getting and attracting investors from the investor side of things sometimes becomes attracting predators in the old context, because many investors already know what it's going to take for them to get a product to market. And then they can kind of see if you know that or not. And if they see you and they know that you don't know how to do that, the only other option for them is to try to gain some form of ownership over what you have, so that they can go and get that ownership rapidly evaluated, so that they can cash out on someone who is going to give them a loan based on the valuation of your business. Okay? So to be very clear, people who really invest money is because they have money, and they didn't get that money not knowing how to see what is the real things they should be investing in. We talked about that yesterday. So these kind of people have a tendency to spot right away if you don't know what you're doing or if you're missing a piece. And if they've come to you, it's because there's another game, if you may, where they can sell their portion of what they own, of what you have, based on a valuation that you may not even know how to do yourself. For instance, there is a value to Secret Energy and the entire platform, and those values are based on the industry that it's in. It's based on how many members and the revenues that come in every month. So these are real numbers. And when you go for a valuation, that's what they're going to ask you for. Give us a valuation. And then also, of course, there is the roadmap, or what you plan to build and how many people you even have that will be able to share in that. So again, so that valuation, once it comes in, sometimes people have things that they don't know the value of. Right. So that's what these investors do, too, is they like, yo, he says he only wants 10,000 to start the business. And we know that we can go and flip this for 800,000 right now. So they'll do things like, well, if you give them 10% of the business, they'll go sell 5% of the business for the same thing that they paid you that 10% for, and keep that 5%. That's the game of investors. It's not that they like you, like your product, and they really think it's going to change the world. That's generally not the kind of person that you're dealing with. So is it possible to solely fund a project rather than seeking X amount of investors? Yes, if you have that kind of capital and you understand how to scale that product. 9 times out of 10, it's probably not going to happen that way if it's like something that you're trying to make big. And then the only other option then that I feel like is viable rather than crowdfunding, because as I was mentioning earlier before I lost my train of thought, people who fund crowdfunds are only getting a product. That's it. If they get that. So I fund a crowdfund for a tricycle or whatever, like, I don't know, a bicycle. If everything goes well, I get the bicycle. Nothing else. Maybe a little discount off that bike. So standardly, that's not really enough. So in my world, in toroidal economy, I think that if you got that bicycle and you were a part of when that bicycle first started selling, and you were the reason why that bicycle was able to even come to market, you should get a small percentage of every time a bicycle sells. Because what does that also do is that, now let's say as the bicycle maker, that's why it's called a toroidal economy, because everybody's spinning up. Now as a bicycle maker, now I've created this first bicycle, everything is good. What's happening? My investors are happy. My customers are happy and my investors are happy. So when I go to my investors again and say, look, guys, we're going to make an electric bike. They're going to be like, you're going to have people that didn't get involved in the first place trying to come to you. Hopefully I get into that. And it's going to create that phase like what was going on with ICOs. And that's why you know this is a real thing. This is not a fake thing, but it's got to be done a specific way or it just doesn't work. But remember in the ICO days, I remember Blue Zell specifically because I cried that night. Like there was this project coming, everybody was like, Blue Zell, they're going to be the biggest. They got this guy, they got that guy. Look at the team, look at this, look at that. And you were kind of like, what was it, whitelist or something like that. And even if you was on the whitelist, though, this just meant that you could invest. And then they will open up the door like it was like the Christmas Day sale or the Black Friday sale. And everybody would be coming in trying to just invest even 2 ETH, 3 ETH, whatever, anything that they could get in there. And within seconds, they will make 200 million and have to shut the door. We can't take no more money. And everybody will be mad. F you. I said, this is incredible. Where have you ever seen people upset about not being able to give their money? There's got to be something with this blockchain thing. And it's just because, of course, the potential of what could be made was immense. And it generally delivered, especially in that time. But again, the thing that a lot of us weren't educated on was how to exit, how to liquidate profits. Because you would have I remember one of the first investments that, was going on in the space. I won't say who was making those investments, but it was $1,000 on Dragon Chain, which was Walt Disney, supposedly Disney's cryptocurrency, right? Which was really just two people that worked for the company, but rapidly got fired. But, it was weird. They just was out for that bread. But anyway, it launched. And $1,000 became $40,000, within no time. And it was wild because you actually saw $40,000 become $600 again without any kind of entering or exiting because, again, the energy around the field was not educated. And everybody knew that was financial investors and that kind of thing, that this was the next big Wall Street. And there was going to be plenty of chum in the water for the sharks because all these new people who thought they were so educated about how to invest weren't really educated and were going to lose their money in this thing that was touted as hodling all the way down. Okay. So I guess, to conclude then is we want to make sure that everything that we're engaging in, that it's input output. If I'm going to put something in, I need to get something out. The more energy and time you put into the system as we've designed it, the more the feedback of the system is going to continue to reward you for that. And then as operators, what you're always looking at is I don't really start things that I don't know is going to be beneficial to everybody. I don't start things that are only beneficial to me. And yeah, that sounds great as a humanitarian, but I'm just telling you also as a business owner, why would you start something that is not going to be something beneficial to everybody? Eventually or very rapidly, it's not going to work. So it's it's one thing to, again, just say it from a feel good, I don't start anything that people, but I think it's common sense that right now, if you start something that you can't really see what is the benefit or the reward for other people getting involved with it, then you're not getting that everything is going into that gamification phase. And most of the stuff is already there. And pretty soon, many of these platforms are going to have to award their users in some way, shape, or form. And they've collected so much money now, they don't have a problem with actually doing that, but that is going to be a big part of the future. And that's why we're going to be seeing a lot of platforms become DAOs. There's talk of Twitter right now getting ready to set themselves up with Jack Dorsey, et cetera, to become a DAO or another variant of Twitter to become a DAO. Right. And then what this does is this is a whole new round of funding for these guys. Remember, the rich, in this case, because they've gotten so much control over the system, they get richer. In the event that Twitter becomes a DAO, how many people you think will become a member of Twitter's DAO and buy Twitter's DAO token? Right? So they can't lose generally any way they turn. So that's prominence. That's when you get to a point where it's just remember, even with the apes token, that's also some of the people from Twitter. Go look it up. So those are people from Twitter. So that's Jack Dorsey, the whole club. Because all these guys, when you look at Crunchbase, they're all in the same club. And we talked about that before. You can go to Crunchbase. You can follow the money. You can go to Bored Apes on Crunchbase. You can see who the first investors were. You can then go and see what they're investing in now. So you can then maybe gander and assume, even though past experience is not indicative of future performance, but you can gander that whatever they're investing in now is probably going to be the next big thing, because that's all they do is move in and out of the next big thing. And just be very specific, especially with many of these projects, that they're attracting retailers money because, and in the end, there's no actual industry for the product yet. And this is why we didn't launch for years, is because there's no way to logically say we sell this so we can make this money back. Everything is speculation. That would be like Apple forever sending pictures of this computer that they never brought out yet. And we're like 5 or 6 years in, and Apple's still promising with these pictures of these phones and these pictures of these laptops, but they've never delivered a laptop or anything. That's what's going on in the cryptocurrency space right now, because there's only financial instruments, but there's very little industry. And that's why it keeps. So what I'm saying is, why don't we bring an industry in, being a house that we actually have a native token, we have utilities that bolt on to that token, such as software, such as the Toroidal economy app, which also can be open sourced or used in other DAO communities and has a small fee to it. And then now you can actually say the reason why that token is going up is because they're making sales like everything else used to be. Like you have to be able to have a value that people want to pay for. And if not, then it's not going to fly. And then ultimately it's not. And if you think it is, and you're deceiving yourself, and unfortunately you're going to lose a lot of people's money too, because in the end, when the smoke clears, that's all there's going to be anyway. Real companies on the blockchain that have real industry and real products. And all of the financial service cryptos are all going to be consolidated into the main giants of that industry, which will more than likely be the ones who adapt the first Bitcoin ETF, the ones that actually have the real licensings for real hedge funds and instruments that can be moved like the way that we saw with TerraCoin without the collapse, right? So again, that was a long question, long way to answer, but it was a long way to answer a very short question, but it was very imperative that you understand, just the difference between, bringing something to market, getting investors, et cetera. So this second question, or next question here is, to be a Hydrolux agent here in South Africa, is there a consignment option and assistant with exceptionally high import costs and exchange rates? What we've done is that we take care of everything. So we take care of the shipping, we take care of you basically just bring the client. Now, why do we do it like that? Because if we have a product and we're willing to ship that product. Now, we have certain products that we've now began to open up wholesaling on. One of them is SheLegit, right? But then when it comes to basically opening up more distribution outlets, that strictly is about turnover, right? How many units can actually be sold in South Africa, right? And generally what that requires is it requires a person to say, okay, well, listen, I'm going to buy, and generally there's a minimum quantity. I'm going to buy 24 Hydroluxes. And of course, we would, as the manufacturer, extend those Hydroluxes to you at a lower price than obviously sale price, right? So the wholesale price, right? And then you would basically import those units. They would all be in the same box, so the shipping rates would be lower. And then you would distribute those units from there. So that's generally how that kind of thing works. And as I said, we've opened up SheLegit for that right now because it's a very nimble product and it allows us to do that. We have the right kind of licensings to get it across certain borders and things like that. And as we keep going in the future, we hope to open up more products like that. But that, of course, also is based on how much we're getting that product for, how heavy is that product, how large is it. And as you said, the biggest thing with Hydrolux is how big it is. The latest unit, which we're still, we're thinking, should we go at this again? Because we're pretty much almost breaking even with Hydrolux, just to understand that. Sometimes you go into a venture and you realize that, well, I loved it, but maybe not everybody does. Okay. But this unit here, it has a digital display, goes 6,000 ppb. Even when you open this thing, it sounds like you're opening up like something that is under pressure. It's a bit smaller, which I found to be a bit better because it's not as top heavy. It could go in your backpack really easy, etc. And it's just kind of like you don't even mind just kind of drinking directly from it. So I think that personally, this is somewhat of a upgrade to the first unit. But I wonder if that original scenario, which is that not a lot of people know about hydrogen water or care. And there's all these crappy hydrogen creation products on the market that cost $20 or $30 and are just a lot harmful. But how can you distinguish the difference between yours and those to the average consumer? Because the average consumer is going to look at it and say, well, this one's $250, this one's $30. And they're going to probably maybe dive into that. So that's one of the things about why we're forming a council around digital assets is that we need educated people who know how to assess the value of something. So that way we're kind of not doing the wishful thinking because as you move into a DAO, remember, it's a whole collective. So when we make bad financial decisions, it affects everybody. So that's why you want to bring councils in that somebody is able to vote and say, it's not a good idea. I love hydrogen water too, for sure. Let's all get one for ourselves, but we cannot bring this product to market. You see what I mean? So that's the kind of soundness that you want to put into the finance. And if you want to hit us up in support, maybe we can have some solutions for you over in South Africa. But as of now, it's only She Legit that we're really able to leverage like that. There's another question is, what is the process of being a product to SE Store? And I'm assuming this is saying, what is the process of putting products inside of Secret Energy Store? Currently, what we've decided to do is just go forward with the marketplace, because our store, we have this thing where we don't want to carry products that don't work. And sometimes if you open up the doors for someone, and you got to open up the door for everyone. For us with digital assets, courses and things like that, we already are really schooled in that, especially with what we would be able to bring to market, the topics and those kind of things. So we can easily say, hey, you could improve in this area, that area. But if we open it up for products, it's going to be that much more difficult for us to be able to find out where that line is. And then unfortunately, you will probably get in products that, maybe they're not as good of a product. The other thing is that you got to remember, when you carry products, you generally need to ship them. It's a big issue when you have a product that belongs to somebody else and they're responsible for shipping them. Because when the order comes through, you give them the order and you don't know if they're shipping out today, tomorrow, or whatever. And so basically it's a mess. And at the end of the day, when you be making like $1 or $2, you got like $100 worth of headache because of all that. So we decided that we really want to go forward with these digital assets. We want to push, as I said, literature. We want to push music. We want to push courses. We want to push things like that because it allows us to scale it really easy. And then another thing is the payment process. I can't say enough that it sounds easy to put a product into a store and then if it sells, to give the person their money. But that means maybe you've never been in it before, because what happens is one, every month somebody has to generally manually, at least query the system for how many of them sold. Then they have to do the math. Then they have to send the person the money. And they have to, at the end of the year, 1099 that person. So there's a lot of steps there. Also, if that person says, hey, I don't believe that I believe I sold more. I believe I sold less. There generally needs to be something in the system that allows that person to be able to audit the system themselves, which exposes them to the finances of that system. So you got to make that decision too. With the DAO, all that's simplified. One, everything's transparent anyway. You can see the wallets that the money comes into, and you can see when the money is being sent. Two, it's autonomous, as it is with the blockchain, not something that you're going to create in the future, but just as it is, it's really easy to split. As this command says here, you could see it. It says split, right? And what are you going to split? You're going to split every time there's a wallet. Like if we're selling a product, This thing is API integrated with our digital marketplace. The moment that something is sold, it splits it right away into your wallet and into our wallet and into if somebody else created it, its wallet, et cetera. And it does all that automatically. And if you want to audit it, meaning you need to know how many of them sold, maybe there's some discrepancies around that. You can go right to the contract and see how many have sold. And you could do all of this at your own leisure as many times as you want. And so that also is a big part of the scalability thing that I'm saying, that we're not like a huge team. So when we do certain things, we have to consider that, hey, this team right here is going to have to manage that. So when we know we're bringing in something that may have a lot of steps to it, then we want to integrate the kind of technologies that are going to allow us to do that. And it also not cause a mess and piss people off and all that kind of stuff too. And not give them an impression that in any way that we're not being honest. So I feel like that is the best way to do that. This next question is, would the toroidal economy be a suitable space for my sound healing business? I'm trying to start. Would the Secret Energy platform be able to have something like Clubhouse where I'd be able to give members sound baths, etc.? Okay, so let's just kind of take that apart just very briefly and some of the things that are being discussed, because they're separate within themselves. So the toroidal economy is a suitable place for, if you said I wanted to create a sound healing course, and you knew you either needed the finances or the clients, or there's something about that course like the illustration or the videography or something, and you needed still those things done to be able to put it all together. That's what the toroidal economy platform is designed to do. So you got different people really in the toroidal economy platform, some people who are looking just to invest and good products and things that they know that, hey, the last one I got into in the toroidal economy went really well. I'm already earning X amount in passive income off these things that I funded, and I also have one myself. I'm looking for more. And so you just understand the dispositions here. And so if we are, so that's a toroidal economy and what it's capable of doing. Now, when you're saying, a business that you're trying to start, that's a different dynamic, right? Because there's different things that businesses need to start. And I guess the most important part is the clients. And so where we kind of come in is that sound healing is a big topic amongst our groups, right? We have more of a audience that is sensitive to such things than maybe even other outlets, right? And so in this case, what I could see or envision what would be the first things, because I don't want to make up stuff here. Like, we have a very clear roadmap and there's enough on that. And we don't want to say that we're going to be able to do something that is not even in the roadmap. What I'm seeing is that what is in the roadmap is that process of being able to go live. And I would assume that can get enhanced a little bit further, rather easy. And that is to create a system that allows you to do that kind of like in a virtual private room, if it is something that you're actually doing online. And that's also where the decision has to be made by the committee about, is this something that transfers really well to something online, or is this something that needs to be done in the physical? Because a lot of the tools that we're building is to interoperate online. Some of the physical stuff we have going on is obviously within the platform and meeting people inside the platform. But we would still say that if you logged on and let's say you're in, I don't know, Schenectady or somewhere in Wisconsin, we may only have like 4 people anyway in that arena or in that zone. And so to assume that we would be able to get enough people into your business that will really make a difference physically would just kind of be silly. We know that wouldn't be likely. But to expose you to more people who want to go through the sound healing process would be. But also right now, what we really see that is directly aligned with that is actually soul coaches, because soul coaches are good at doing what they do. So, and being themselves. And so what happens is when someone chooses a soul coach, they generally choose a soul coach based on things that they want to achieve or things that they feel is right along in alignment with what they're doing. So someone who loves sound and loves sound healing and seeing your profile as a soul coach is going to be more apt to actually sign up with you rather than any other soul coaches. So I trust that makes sense of how these tools that we have now are being implemented could actually be useful for the growth of what you're developing. It's a little bit different than maybe how you imagine, but when combining even one or two, when combining two of these, it could bring you to that conclusion. All right, so the next question here is, to be a soul coach, does one need to be enrolled? Before I finish this question, or, rather than finish the question, the whole soul coach layout of what it does take to become a soul coach will be published very soon. It is already done. And it is a actual process, meaning it's something that you got to read through. Not everybody is just going to come right in and be a soul coach, because there is the process of you being yourself. And we verify that by you coming in and speaking with the council. And then we make a decision on whether, you're ready for that or not. And also any pointers, if not, to how you can become ready. So that will be posted very soon. We had to kind of take a break on even just getting it into the website for this launch that we're doing right now. So definitely stay close on the Soul Coach thing, and you'll see that within the next interim, which shouldn't be long, we will have that information available so you can see how to go through that process. The next question here is kind of crowdsourcing, but non-financial, looking at all the entrepreneurs here. I'm wondering if we as a tribe have a way to promote each other's businesses, help each other find clients, external tribe, support, and mentor. My question is exactly, in my experience, I can only answer that question from experience, is that it's interesting that everyone needs the clients, but they don't know how to get the clients. And I just want to keep it very, very stringent. It is not easy to get clients. Like, I don't want to fool you. I have to tap dance, look nice, shave, crack jokes, dance, invent weird shit, go into diffusion models, learn stuff I don't know. And that's all for, there's 54 of us right now on the line. You see what I mean? Literally, even with the competition, we're talking about basically giving stuff away that equates to value of thousands of dollars. Like, even the floor prices now have to increase based on our industry anyway. So we're giving that stuff away. And there's about 200 people participating. We ran the Luma, which all members of the platform are invited. There's quite a few members in the platform. We actually do see their circulation through the platform, but only 1,500 users decided to join in on this venture with us out of 50,000. Okay. So that should let you get an understanding. And this is 15 years of nonstop. Like, I'm not sure, maybe I'm just on this end thinking it's on fleek and it's really not, but man, every time I jump in here, I really do strive to bring more value. Like, it's polished, the screen is clear, like all these different things you can see that we've invented. Like, it's a very small team. So the reality is that you would think that there would be more people engaged and involved, but it expects and it demands more, right? So this also means that when we bring in new products or bring attention to someone, generally it's a benefit for them, but there's virtually beyond whatever it is that they're bringing, no benefit for us. We're basically just giving them clients and giving them money. And then what happens is, and because maybe that's not all so bad, especially if it's something that's really good for them to really ingest or participate in. But what that person even experiences that offers that is this. They'll have that initial spike, and then it'll go like this. So the initial spike is people that actually trust us, take our word for it. We say, hey, go check out this course. So there'll be that first part that buy that course. And now what we need to focus on is how this course is going to consistently make sales. And then what happens is that, so then when you have all of the focus going on all these different things or all these different people, here's a new person, they got listed yesterday, and then it was only a small amount anyway. Now you've completely diluted your entire market, if you may. So what are the solutions? So we think about this because it's like, yeah, we would love to just, and we've had people come in the platform like that too. And that becomes somewhat of an issue. And that's why we started realizing, hey, we need to kind of design this a little bit differently, especially for the future. And it's because you get people that just come in and they see, oh, look, here's a new sales pool for me to tap into. right? And then they try to figure out how they're going to interlope with what we're doing to get those sales. And then they move on to the next thing, but they follow none of the creed. They follow none of the activity of what we're doing, none of that kind of stuff. You see? So, but you got to imagine when it's something public, you have the potential for something like that to happen versus when we become a DAO, a lot of the things will become more private. And so that's why I'm saying, look, there's a shift coming to Secret Energy. It's like I know what it takes to really make it because I had to tap dance through all these fields over the last 14 years. And I can tell you it's not most of what people think. So then what they thought and what they do very well then has to be converted over to something that everybody wants. And then that is a process that others need to assist in doing the lifting on. So we're focused on bringing those people together that have those skills to be able to then assist people who actually think they have something that everybody would want, but some reason don't have any sales yet, to get to the point where it actually does really work because there's other things that they may have not considered. So as of now, it's easy. It's kind of like, here's another example. It's kind of like looking at the YouTube subscribers, which I think is at 160,000, and saying, well, shoot, if everybody just gave $1, we have $160,000. Have you ever had that thought? Like, it's got 1 million views if everybody just gave $1. And I'm thinking, exactly, if everybody just gave $1. But if you ran that campaign, you would find you got $700. And you'd be like, how do we get $700 out of $150,000 or 150,000 people? And I'll be like, my thoughts exactly. But listen, but I got to go figure that out because there can't be too much of not understanding what's happening. And then you're expecting to have anything running. So remember, we're at enterprise level. That's another thing that I want to explain because it kind of chimes into what Willie was asking earlier about, can you do this without any investors? When it's small, yes, as I said before. But once you get beyond, for us, it was 15,000 users. At 15,000 users, everybody now wants to take you off of the standard plan and even the premium plan and place you on the enterprise plan because you got, like, Vimeo just sent us an $8,000 invoice. Most people using in Vimeo here right now, it's probably free. It was actually free for us for a while, and then it was like $200 a year. Now they just decided almost like overnight, this started like 6 months ago, that they were going to start professionally billing everybody who was over a certain bandwidth. And they just sent an $8,000 invoice. So what I'm getting at here is that when they send that invoice, it means either the end of the university or somebody's got to pay the invoice. And at the end of the day, that's where it comes into the critical thinking and like making really sound financial moves and decisions with the platform, because there's not too many of those that you can absorb. Like Intercom, they do it too. So all these different softwares, the servers themselves, mainly also the developers. You can't have anything online without a developer. The website doesn't just stay as it is, like, yo, it's fixed, it's done. We go ahead and write that last line of code, hit enter and lock it up. We all good? No, it breaks all the time, like little small stuff and everything. So then you got to call a guy that's got to make upwards to $50 to $65 an hour, generally a lead developer, and have him start figuring that out. So what I'm saying is that there's a cost associated to everything. So you got to be very strategic with how you deploy things and who you're deploying them to in order to even be able to survive. Because guess what? We're also after the whole pandemic thing. And that's something I don't think any of our members had the need to even consider, is that Secret Energy survived after the pandemic. And I don't care what kind of business you were, everything went like this, because everything is just like, this is a luxury. I just wanted to stop and let you understand that. Like, learning spiritual knowledge is a luxury. Why? Man, when shit's really hitting the fan, do you really go to the books? Hell no, you go to the job, you go to every single thing else to fix whatever it is, that problem. You know, some of us are spiritually inclined, so you may go and do your honorings and things like that the moment the sign of trouble. But most people, when something traumatic is happening in their life, they cut off everything that's like, they don't buy supplements. All that's like a luxury. They don't listen to 7 Bomar conversations about spirituality. All that is secondary, not even secondary, but like later on, they got to handle the immediate emergency. And that's why we did a build, and we talked about basically the difference between these kind of luxuries that we have in life versus oh my goodness, there's a specific term for this, but like toilet tissue is what I'm saying. The necessities. So if Secret Energy sell toilet tissue, maybe we don't have a problem. Maybe we can put little notes on the toilet tissue or something. But as long as it's like sound healing, let's say, not to pick on anyone here, but it takes a person to be at a certain level in different ways. One, they have to believe in sound healing. Two, they have to have the excess capital to be able to spend on sound healing. Three, they need to feel like that you're the sound healer for them. And they're very finicky. Conscious people are very finicky. Oh, they'll cut you off in a moment. Like they'll be smiling with you today and you're done tomorrow. So it's a very sensitive thing. So I found it to be that if you could do something in this space, you can really do something anywhere, because it really challenges you just from the level as that you come in and you want to give something, right? Like even as a sound healer, you're going to give someone something that's an immense, beautiful experience for them, but you got to convince them of that. And that kind of seems very weird, because you would think if you had something that everybody should want, and then they even partake in things that are not good for them. So everything about the reality, until we correct it, is turned upside down. People support the things that are actually the worst for them, and then they criticize the things that are the best for them at times. General populace. Also, remember, this message primarily, that's why there's constant transformations in what's going on, is not really for the people who are like you, if you may, that already know a lot about this stuff and vibe to it. You already know it. You already got it. It's for the people that we're calling the masses. So we constantly have to figure out how to make bridges to the masses without compromising our own ethics, our own creeds, our own manifestos, etc. And so that's what does make this a little bit tough. And as we keep going, though, that's why I said when you start adopting things that are not so polarized, then you give a good bridge, you give a better bridge for people to come to where you're at, if you may, and to participate in what others may have that are around you. Because if everybody offered their product here and it was amazing, but we had no audience to offer it to, then we've defeated the purpose. So that's why, as I was saying, and I've been saying for a few months now, maybe even a year, that the reason why we're now exploring other venues is because we didn't actually get adoption in the conscious community on YouTube or in these other spaces, because we don't toe the line. You won't find one COVID post on Secret Energy. Because the moment that the energy starts going all in one direction, we turn the other way. And sometimes people say to us like, oh my goodness, how is he ignoring COVID? It's like, exactly, that's why. Because everybody else is talking about it. Why? Go listen to them. Oh my goodness, why is he ignoring flat earth? Go holler at Brother Sanchez. He's like the flat earth king. It doesn't mean that we have to do something that someone else is doing. In fact, what we've learned is that we should stay in our own lane and do what we do, and keep the rarity and the scarcity around that, and keep cultivating that, because that's what really creates value. So some of the final questions here. Oh my goodness. What's going on in here? 62 questions. Now, hold on. All right. So let me see what time it is. Rapid fire. So I'm going to go from here to the 30-minute mark. I'm going to answer these questions fast. Love Hydrolux. Will this new one be added to the store, or is there a way for those who want to get a new one? Still on the fence. I thought about even doing that to just kind of open it up. But yeah, I mean, I'm still on the fence a little bit about this, because the other thing is that it doesn't have, we design a lot about the packaging. This right here is straight from the from not the laboratory, but the assembly plant, if you may. And to keep going forward, then I'm going to need to go into the quantity purchase if I want the packaging. You know how they do that. If you want the packaging, you need 20 million of those boxes. And so what I'm trying to make a decision on now, since especially the original Hydrolux has such a very nice case, is it worth rolling the new Hydrolux, even though it won't have the beautiful case with it, but it is a more powerful and more durable unit. And then overall, the financial venture itself doesn't really make sense right now. So get back with me on that, TD. I'll let you know soon, because I did a little poll about that with the tribe. And I'm still making some choices on the feedback that we've received for that or from that. Let me see here. It looks like we're almost getting to the end. Looks like most of those 62 were just comments with those that existed in the chat. I don't see any questions. I'm still scrolling. Okay, so it looks like that we've actually reached the end of the questions today. And again, I do want to give thanks to everybody that has had an opportunity to participate. And I just want to just say one final thing, because you know when you do 9 events, it's like, after I just start coming up with topics, like I can speak on anything really. I just got to find some cool topics to talk about. And, you know, I did astringent to some of the high points because, again, some of the stuff coming up is going to really address things going on, even inside of the makerspace and some of the stuff that we're inventing. But I can tell you this, that what I've done is that I've scanned everything. Like there's pretty much nothing that I can think of that's important that I don't know about. And then when I do that, I also do it as an observer, and I figure out how does it connect in with everything that I know so far. That also, when I do that from a standpoint of a person who actually got out of the whole business thing while I was successful. And if anybody knows my story, you know I've spoken on this story multiple times. It was just that my spiritual experience was strong enough to make me give away all of my luxuries and reverse what I felt like was some kind of weird path that I was always on. Get a bunch of things, lose it. Get a bunch of things, lose it. And at this stage, I had got a bunch of things, and I was kind of tapped on the shoulder by higher self and say, hey, you're about to lose everything again. You might as well give it away first and see if you can reverse this equation. And that's what I did. And then I came to Costa Rica. So then the last thing I ever thought of actually is that I would even be using computers again, because I come from a computer background, but that experience was so strong. I was like, I'm not even working anymore. I was working at a institute for healing, right? Daily cleansing the body, groups coming in from different places around the world and coming in for like these 1 week, 2 week cleanses of their body. And I work with a doctor, and that's what I was doing. I didn't even make money for that. It was just my room and board that was paid for, and as many supplements that I could eat. And of course, everything that was available inside of that institute. That was enough for me. I had enough money from the final existing savings, because I had my rent down to here in Costa Rica, my rent and my livelihood, meaning needing to eat and those kind of things, down to roughly $400 to $500 a month. Okay. And with that, based on my savings, I could live for 10 years. And that's what I was trying to do. I lived in this little finca. It looked right into the ocean. I managed this house for these people that never were here in the country. And that was actually a really nice house. So basically what I'm saying is that when I had the vision to move away from all of the fields of commerce and everything like that, it was something that I was able to do even with having a lot of stuff. It wasn't that I got flat broke and then decided to come to Costa Rica and then I created Secret Energy. It didn't go like that, right? And I think it's very important to understand that if you want to know a little bit about me and you want to know a little bit about what I'm doing and what I'm actually creating, what I've decided to do is I decided to come back into this space because I feel like that, for lack of better terms, a lot of times we don't have a horse in that race. I happen to be born on the year of the horse, but so it's kind of funny. But what I mean by that is you see all these different things happening, cryptocurrency, AI, and all these things. And many people are solidifying their future, their financial future in these respective spaces. But it's like, well, we don't know anybody that's in that space, though. Even in this whole legal thing, is there one lawyer on the line? I think if our brother Harold Dickerson is here today, he's the only lawyer that I know inside the entire platform. So when we ask somebody to figure out completely how to really legally form some of these kind of trust and information that we need to know to be able to get ourselves out of the system, we have almost few to anybody that we can actually really trust with that information. With that process. It brings me to the awareness of, even when I got in trouble in life, I realized that even the lawyer that I had hired didn't give a shit about me. He just wanted to get the money. And then this old guy told me, he said, see, youngster, that's why we used to have family lawyers, because when you have a family lawyer, the family lawyer is not just concerned about getting his money. He knows your father and he knows everybody else in the family. And that's why they have family lawyers, but for you now, between you and this lawyer, there's nothing in between you two but money, nothing else. He doesn't care about you. And so I find that this is kind of like what's happened because we've become so separated, is that we don't really have people that are prominent, really know about certain things, willing to actually help us and not cheat us, willing to be patient with us, all these kind of things. It's like there's no support for that. So what we decided to do was to create that because we didn't see it. So that was like the essence of what I started here, and that's the essence of what's here. So, and it just so happens also that in life, if you find something that everybody wants, but it's not available, it probably will be something that really succeeds over time, right? Because that's the formula of creating a good business. You find things that somebody really wants and that few people are providing, and then you pioneer that field. So it just so happens that for us, even within the last 3 years, despite the pandemic, the reason why we were able to survive is because people started seeing what we were talking about before as relevant. Because we told everybody about the big thing going to happen 2 years before it happened, because you could see that in the energetic field. You could see it in data that was coming back. They was telling you about it. Even the Great Reset, they just published it and then they did it. And they're still going in that direction. So at this stage, we're looking at the next phase that's already published of what they're already saying they're going to do. And then we're designing a system that allows us to be able to go on with a better life. Not a normal life, not the same thing, not close to it, but not as much, but a better life even after they make those decisions or implement those decisions, not make those decisions, implement those decisions. And I'm telling you, just like people will quote me from 2 years ago when all the stuff happened, stop quoting me. Just do what I'm telling you to do. Well, hold on. I got to watch out with that kind. Do what I tell you to do. Yeah. All you got to do is listen to what I'm saying, rather than later on being like, Seven told us this, but you didn't make any moves based on what I said. I'm telling you that in a world of 9 billion people, what they struggle with is trying to keep track of all those people. It's like a business and now you have too many customers. It's like something that's getting too complicated and you need to implement a system that gives you more control over what's going on. And that's what's happening with the controllers, is that the advancement of technologies is not, the advancement of technology does not match with the legacy system that we are coming off of with money, dollars. Some of the printers right now that you're able to get right off of eBay are strong enough to print and strong enough and accurate enough to print money, financial documents, etc., identical to what they used to have a monopoly on. Okay? So there's other things that are going on that a lot of people are not considering, is that technology is also moving at a pace that things that they used to have a monopoly on, they don't have a monopoly on. And a lot of those things are security instruments, security itself, meaning that with the government running mostly on legacy systems, a hacker coming in is disrupting everything. So they got to upgrade all those systems and put it into something that's fraudless. This is what happened to the bank. And so what I'm trying to get at here is that the technologies are either going to completely release or completely confine, nothing in between. When they adapt blockchain, it will really put some meaning to that word. Block, which nobody likes a block. Blocks don't roll, they don't turn. They make good foundations, but you see what I mean? Block. You can't get access. Chain. Now, do any of these, like, chains are good for, like pulling things, pulleys and this kind of stuff, but a blockchain? So what I'm saying is that this technology is capable, because I wanted to actually mention this yesterday, is that, see, the big thing here is that it's about affiliation. Actually, I guess today was the build. So it's about affiliation. So what happens is that inside of their system, in a little bit, everything that you do, Even that little $10 that you give to your homie or to your aunt or to whatever, all that's got to be accounted for, right? Because that's almost like a fraudless system. Meanwhile, that same system, meaning blockchain, is also decentralized. So you're either in the centralized blockchain or you're in the decentralized blockchain. And for them, that's like either you're an ally or you're an axis. Because what you'll notice is all the axis countries will have to adapt their own private network style blockchains. And that's why really what we're being encouraged to do is not just go and create a token and be on the blockchain. What we actually have to do is eventually remove ourselves from. It's basically like Ethereum is their own Ethereum is the blockchain. People are minting ERC20 tokens. There's other protocols that you could become a network. You see what I mean? So the goal is, you got to crawl before you walk, but to become your own network. So then when you have your own commodity, you have your own revenues, and you have your own network, and then you have your own toroidal economy with your own assets, with your own monetary policy operating on cosmic law. Now, something like that, you'll actually see the spiritual benefits be way more pronounced than the physical benefits. Even though there'll be many physical benefits, but you got to understand that we're talking about principalities now. We're talking about stuff that can to turn back the clocks on aging, disease, and issues that are happening to us that we don't even really understand where that's all coming from. Also, just to make this very practical, when somebody says you need to do something as a sovereign, you don't have to listen to them. They only can tell you you have to do something if there's something in their system that you need. And it's unfortunate that we still use their bank accounts. We still use PayPal. We use PayPal. So I'm in this race myself to decentralize and stabilize everything that I'm engaged in, because I understand that coming sooner than later, there's going to be no operating inside that system unless you want to be compromised. Now, I knew that already. I didn't necessarily have all the details on why. I knew it already. I understood what I was dealing with from an occult level. Now comes pouring in the finer details. Like for those that need to really be convinced why, go listen, as I said before, to the cosmic law. And at any point, just go and verify what he's saying. Is there really a mercantile act where each person is bound to their own trust as a surety, which allows them to basically begin to borrow from their bankrupt franchise that has been sold so many times? It basically not only doesn't have any value, it's racking up fines. Enter. And you will start seeing all these legal entries for exactly that being true and done. So before, people used to have this thing with, when I was talking about spiritual knowledge, where they can just always kind of be like, yeah, but that's just that spiritual knowledge. So how do we know? Now I knew because, you could go in there, you could activate a third eye and you can see what's going on. But still, for those who haven't entered into that sanctum, they can always be like, well, how does he know? Why should we trust him? But with the legal thing, you can't do that. Because it's in black and white, and it's in the very fiber of what you're doing and how you're operating every single day. And so if you don't think that is priority to get up every single day from henceforth and study more about releasing yourself from the bonds of the system as if they don't exist, then you need to take a cold, hard look at yourself and start realizing and asking yourself, what is my real purpose here? Because your first obligation is to yourself. These courses and these things that I'm doing, will you buy NFT or not? We will probably end up airdropping more NFTs than we actually sell. This is not about selling NFTs. This is about starting the process and getting familiar with the process of becoming our own governors and having things that really do that, not just a wishful thinking mind like, yeah, that's something that, but still you go out and you run the ATM card through. If this works, and it will, like I said, we dubbed it Project Freeland, meaning that you enter onto facilities and you're not transacting money when you're on facilities that belong to Secret Energy Foundation and Creator DAO, because everything there is an industry that is toroidal. So you come in, you create, there's a studio, there's a sound director, there's developers, there's these people who are all in this nucleus that all have decided that the value is within them. Now, let me give you a real life story. The guys who I believe they created Marvel Comics, maybe somebody can share that link of their documentary of when they realized that they were the top 5 artists in the world drawing comic books, but they still worked for, I think that was DC, probably, because that's District of Columbia Comics. They still worked for that branch. And they were not only not getting the intellectual property from what they were creating, they also were getting super chumped off when it came to how much they were making. They were making like, if they made $1, if DC made $1, then they made 5 cents on that dollar, 5 cents. So they were barely able to take care of their families. It was like a minimum wage job. But the reason why they kept working is because this was the only comic book company that had, that kind of clout and spin to be able to hire these artists. So they got together one day, since they were all friends, and they decided, you know what? Once they did a little simple math, if we even got 10% of the people who buy these comics to buy them from us, we would still make as much money as we are making now, except we would have our own comic book company. And they all made a decision that day to do it. And now they're the largest comic book company in the world. Okay? Because it's just like a simple critical thinking at a certain point where you have to realize that we keep feeding this thing to destroy us. So if at some point someone doesn't even start, because we got to start somewhere. Like some people, they challenge me because it's not already done, but they won't put any hands in it. And it's like 14 years. They criticize every single moment. Why are you even building a website? Why you do this? Why do you do that? Why do you do that? But every moment I had my head down and just kept building, because this is like the floor of what you need to have. This is the foundation of what you need to have. That's why the Secret Energy Foundation. It's the foundation of what you need to have before you can even start building. All of this, 14 years on a foundation. Imagine what the house is going to look like, though. Because if you put 14 years into a foundation of anything that you're about to build, that means that foundation is stable enough to grow something big. And that's what the vision is here, rapidly becoming reality. It's like just being agile in all of this and being able to adapt, but not being compromisable. I don't have to compromise anything. If anything, I'm going to enhance and I'm going to suggest, greater things. And so I just want everybody to understand that the fiber of this, and if it means anything, which we're going to see in a moment, doesn't mean anything if you came completely true with it and you just, put your head to the ground and kept developing until you actually got to what it is that you feel like for years that everybody keeps saying that they want, even though they may not know how it looks. I have one final addendum here. I learned a lot from AI. It seemed to know a lot of things. But one of the things that I noticed more than anything is that people don't know how to imagine. Many times we ask somebody, hey, anything that you can imagine, pretty much, we can create a picture of. Just give us a prompt. And when they send that prompt to us, we notice that a lot of times everything that they're mentioning is canceling out the previous thing they mentioned. This is a phenomenon. So this is our own way of kind of seeing what's going on inside of the imaginative consciousness, even of our community specifically, but generally at large, is that people don't know how to imagine. One, they don't know what they want. And in the event that you say, just tell me what you want, they put so many things that don't have anything to do with each other. So we even have to re-educate ourselves on how to imagine and how to visualize things and to bring them to the manifestation. Because when I started really getting into this, like my third or fourth year, I was already starting to become aware of certain things that we would have to do that others were going to disagree with. Even having a website, people disagree with. But it was because they didn't see the whole vision. The whole vision for this, of what we're developing, existed before we even started. It's like you generally have a business plan before you start a business. So in this, we had a creed: wholeness and balanced vibrations. That was it. And that meant so much, because remember, if you got the whole thing, you got everything. There's nothing excluded. We found people who got the whole thing was having a hard time staying in balance. So we added that word, balanced. And then we found out also that everybody had this energy coming off of them, and it was a vibration. And that vibration affected others around them. It affected us. It affected the space that we're in. So we just asked for everyone to be responsible for the energy that they brought into the space as soon as possible. There was this gray area, like what do they call that? The boot camp or whatever that happened in the beginning, probation that happened in the beginning. But eventually you were asked to create at least some kind of maturity to where you would become an initiate, maybe become an adept. So that's what secret energy is about the continuous innovation, but really still adhering to our original blueprint, which showed us everything. And I find it interesting that even as of right now, from what we understand as legal, the legal aspects of things and what they've done to us, that this narrative that has been going on in a lot of these movies and stuff is almost 100% true, like Westwood and all that kind of stuff, but done in such a subtle way. Like people operating as a dead, bankrupt franchise. Like what kind of, damn, I didn't sign up for that, did I? Oh yeah, you did. You're the grantor, really? And it's kind of like really waking up out of the matrix. Like you realize that you've been the perpetuator of your own doom. Now what though? Because you're still living, you're still breathing, you're still thinking, you're there. Do you give up? And boy, I see a lot of quitters, right? It's all over with them. I can't be with them. No, I can't be in that state of mind. Like think about how much or how many would be let down, how much would be lost. Think about how much has already been invested. Time, energy, I'll never get back. Time with my daughter, time with my wife, time with my friends, time with my family. That wasn't spent. I'll never get that back. So does anybody at all think that I'm in any position to desist from what it is that I'm doing, and that anything that they could ever say or think about me will stop me? Like I'm dealing with and contending with some forces far more greater. And so I just advise everyone to, when somebody is telling you something or somebody is at a certain level, instead of thinking about yourself all the time, step back for a moment and think about, what did it really take for a person to have a makeup like that? If they can tell you certain things, you think about, how do they really know that? And what else do they know? They often say that sometimes when you ask questions, you should sit back and think about who you're asking the question to, so you can think about the most that you can actually get from them as far as an answer is concerned. And so these are the principles, as I'm saying, that this is what we're teaching by example. So I just wanted to say wholeness and balanced vibrations again. Thank you so much. I'll go ahead and unmute the lines. We're about 2 hours and 30 minutes in. So, maybe we'll taper these off a little bit more in the future. But, my goal is to educate and to do that in a way that is sound. So thank you so much. Wholeness.